Hello and welcome to GLL Better at Home. My name's Miriam. Thank you for joining me today. Today we are chatting to author Philippa East. Philippa's debut novel, Little White Lies, came out last year and was nominated for the Guardian's Not the Booker Prize award. Her second novel, Safe and Sound, which I have here, came out in February of this year. And Philippa, alongside her writing, is also a clinical psychologist and therapist. Thank you very much, Philippa, for joining us today.
Total pleasure.
We're going to start by talking about Safe and Sound, and here it is. Can you just tell us a little bit more about it, about the story?
So this story is it's similar to my first book in that it's a sort of psychological suspense book, but I guess actually really it's a mystery, and it centers around a young woman called Sarah Jones, who everybody thinks of as a pretty outgoing, full of life, charismatic young woman. But she is found dead in her bedsit, and it transpires that nobody had realized that she had died for 10 whole months. And the sort of protagonist of the story is a woman called Jen, who is the housing manager for the bedsit where Sarah lived. And Jen takes it upon herself to try and unravel the mystery of how this has happened and who Sarah Jones really was.
It's based, or it's inspired by real life event, isn't it? Something that you saw kind of in the news some time ago. Just explain to us what that was.
Yeah, so one of the things that I found really interesting when I was starting to work on this book, and I told a few people about what I was writing, is they said, oh, that's just so silly, like that wouldn't happen, how would that happen? Like, it doesn't really seem believable. And the really tragic thing is that, it was, like you say, it was based on a true story. There was a woman in her 30s called Joyce Vincent, who lived in North London, and she died at the end of 2003, and her body wasn't discovered until early 2006. And some people might be aware of a film that was made about her life and death. It's called Dreams of a Life. It's a docudrama. It was made by Carol Morley. And I think I saw this film in around 2013, something like that. And I just couldn't get the story out of my mind. It just stayed with me, well, for years, really, until I ended up just having to write my own novel about it. Like, it was the only way I could seem to kind of process all my feelings around it, really. So yeah, it's a really, really tragic story.
It's because when you read Safe and Sound, it is very thought-provoking. It does make you kind of think, because it does kind of play into that base fear that a lot of people have of being alone, of dying alone, of that thing of loneliness is really apparent throughout the book in different forms. So obviously that was something that you wanted to kind of address in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know whether that's maybe feeling even more pertinent in the situation that we're in at the moment. I think one of the things that after watching the film, because I think we often think of these cases, where someone is, died and not been found for a while. We sort of think of them as being perhaps an elderly person, someone who, for some reason, is quite isolated or estranged from people, and maybe because they're old, a lot of their friends or family aren't around anymore. But I think what was so striking about what I was trying to explore was, what about when it's someone that seems to be young, seems to have friends, seems to be part of a network through work or whatever. And it made me think, like, I think we've all got that friend who we haven't been in touch with for a really long time. It might be 6 months, it might even be years. But in our minds, we're sort of thinking, yeah, but I'm sure that they're in touch with other people. You know, maybe you were part of a big sort of loose group of friends and you think, well, you know, maybe I wasn't the closest person to them. They've probably got other people that they're still in touch with. And what if everybody's thinking that? What if everyone's thinking that this person has somebody else that they're closer to, but maybe they don't? Yeah, and that was a really eerie thought for me.
It's because it was also kind of, I always felt that it was about appearances as well, and everybody trying to hold on to this image that, you know, everyone's coping and everyone's got, you know, we've got lots of friends and you've got you know, a good life or holidays and, you know, success. And Jen holds on to that. Jen's very desperate to kind of have that image as well, because she suffers with mental health problems so kind of throughout the book, and you understand that you get to learn that that's historical as well. She's got things in her past. So the book does obviously tackle mental health issues as well. Was that something that you wanted to write into the book right from the beginning?
No, actually. This was quite a hard book. Well, all books are hard to write, to be fair, but this one was quite difficult because I had this premise, which is you know, how does someone die and their death go unnoticed for all this time? And then because I pitched that idea kind of when we were going out on submission to publishers with Little White Lies. My agent said to me, "Oh, it'd be great if we have a second idea to pitch as well." And there was a bit of a hoo-ha around that time of like what idea I was going to go with, and it was all a bit last minute. So I'd written about like half a paragraph of just like a blurb, like you might see on the back of the book. And to be honest, it's pretty much what you see on the back of Safe and Sound now. And the last question is, how is it possible that her body is laid undiscovered for 10 whole months? And when I sort of started to try and write the book, I was like, I don't know. I actually don't know. And I didn't really know anything about Jen as the protagonist. I wrote 3 different outlines, all entirely different. Jen had a completely different backstory. I think in the first 2 versions, her son didn't exist at all. So it took me a really long time to work out who Jen was and what was going on with Jen. And I think, Jen's experience with anxiety, and which is all tangled up with her relationship with Charlie, her 8-year-old son, that came really late in the day, actually. So it became a book about mental health issues, but that wasn't really what I set out to write. But obviously, in retrospect, it all kind of fits in as well, especially what you're saying about the presenting an image, you know, especially with mental health, there's still a lot of stigma, and people can look on the outside completely fine. You know, if we do our hair and we do our makeup and we put our clothes on, who's to know any different? But someone can be having an absolutely terrible time in their life, and unless we can really ask them, or they can really say, we can just walk past people like that every day and just not have a clue. So
No. So how did your work as a clinical psychologist kind of did that help with the writing process for Safe and Sound? Was there a lot of additional research you had to do?
It definitely helped. I mean, I guess because I mean, working with anxiety disorders is very, very common in any kind of mental health work. It's one of the most common types of disorders, anxiety disorders. And so I guess a lot of the way that I was writing Jen was based on my understanding of how anxiety disorders work for people and how they affect our thinking processes, and just how skewed the world becomes and how skewed our behaviors come when we're in the grips of anxiety. And then I think probably like a lot of people, this last year has been very stressful for me as well. So there was some times when I was writing it and I was like, yeah, it's pretty much how I'm feeling right now as well. So I suppose it helped me in the sense of kind of understanding both from a kind of psychologist point of view, but also kind of a personal point of view. And I hope that people who experience anxiety at that level, at that sort of clinical level, will feel that I've captured it in a way that they could relate to. I mean, Jen's anxiety is extreme. It's not everyday anxiety. Everybody has everyday anxiety, but hers is an anxiety disorder. So yeah, of course, it's more extreme.
Yeah, I think there's kind of lots of different aspects of the book, lots of different kind of issues that come up in it. How did you kind of touched on it just then, but how did you feel writing it? Did you said you related, obviously, particularly in this last year. How did you feel? Did you ever have to step away from it, because they're quite intense scenes in some parts of it? How did that feel writing it?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's interesting you say that. I think it's probably quite an uncomfortable read for a lot of people, actually. I know from some people who've got in touch who've read it, said they've really enjoyed it, but it was quite stressful to read the book. Okay. And I get that, because, yeah, how is it to write it? To be honest, I tend to not find it too difficult to write difficult stuff, if that makes sense. Maybe that's because I'm quite used to it in my work as a therapist. It's kind of what I deal with day to day in my job. And I was talking about this with someone the other day. I kind of feel like, as a therapist, it's part of my job and responsibility to be able to go to those really difficult places, so that I can go there with my clients, and my clients can see that I can tolerate it, that they can tell me about these things, or they can share their experiences with me, and I'm not going to be overwhelmed, or I'm not going to be confused or disturbed by what they're saying. So I think maybe I write stuff that readers can find quite difficult, and I don't always realize how difficult it might be to read, because for me it's kind of, I don't know, I'm just like putting it all, I don't know, I just sort of put it all down and let it all out. Maybe it's my catharsis to put it on the page and then give it to other people. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, in general, writing is always a sort of a safe escape type place for me. So I'm always sort of comfortable when I'm writing. Well, I mean, it's so hard work, and sometimes I hate it, obviously, but yeah. I don't tend to find it, difficult in that way. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, no, because it's certainly at the end of it, when I came to the end of it, it was certainly thought-provoking. Sometimes you kind of sit back from a book, and obviously all writing at some level is thought-provoking, but it does really make you think, or made me think about a lot of different things. And part of me, with my library head on, thought, where would you kind of categorize this book? because it's a little bit crime, isn't it? It's a little bit thriller. It's a little bit kind of psychological story. And then I saw a great description from you, which I think you'd said the book is just to the right of crime. I think
yeah. I think I say like one step to the side of a crime sort of thing.
Yeah. Because obviously it has a story. There's kind of intermingling stories, but there are lots of different themes amongst that as well. How did it compare to writing Little White Lies?
I mean, there was lots and lots of differences in different kind of levels. I mean, Little White Lies, I was a lot more clueless about writing a novel at that point. When I started, I had no idea where the story was going. I didn't know how to structure a story. It was, and I think it's so interesting looking back, because I think Little White Lies really came from the heart, and it was kind of, I was so in tune with the characters and, the whole story world for me. And when I came to write my second book, I thought, like, oh, I'll never be able to write a book as amazing as Little White Lies. Like, it's my like precious baby. And to begin with, writing Safe and Sound was really difficult. It was like drawing blood from a stone. Like I was telling you, like, it took me a really long time to work out who the characters even were. And then in my first few drafts, everything felt so two-dimensional. I couldn't really connect with the characters at all. And for quite a long time of writing the book, I just thought it's rubbish. Like, I just was like, this is my second novel and it's just going to be pants, and what could I do? Never mind. And yeah, but it seems to have come out all right. So I don't know. It's I think every book is different, but I think definitely picking up on what you were saying a moment ago in terms of like genre and things, I think both books, and even the books that I'm going on to write now, are kind of in the same vein, that what I really am interested in is about characters and relationships and how people tick and operate. That's the psychologist in me. And I tend to package them up into a sort of maybe like a psychological thriller format, or it's got those kind of elements because I want it to be entertaining. I want it to be a page turner, but at heart it's these themes about family, parenthood, loneliness, mental illness, trauma, healing, forgiveness, grief, all of these kind of core human themes. That's what I'm always exploring, really. And yeah, that's what these books are about at heart, for sure.
So are those the kind of books that you like to read? Yeah,
definitely. So the book that got me into writing these kind of books was Gone Girl, and I always bang on about Gone Girl. Every interview and anyone asks me, I'm like, Gone Girl, because for me it does exactly that. It explores really complex, really interesting themes around womanhood, male-female relationships, toxic relationships, revenge, all of these kind of things. And it's beautifully written as well, but it's a total page turner. And I think I sort of, I like those books that they sort of have a slight literary element to them in often the way that they're written or the themes that they're exploring, but I need a good story as well to kind of get me into it. So yeah, definitely those are the kind of books I enjoy as well.
And you've always been a reader, haven't you? And you kind of attribute that to your writing journey as well as being the kind of the start of your writing journey. Because I read an interview where you said that actually that started in your childhood, and I wonder if you could just expand on that a bit.
Yeah, so I'm a very odd person in that I grew up without a TV until I was about 11, and my sister like kicked up such a fuss with my parents and demanded that we get a TV, and my parents eventually caved. And this was in the this would have been in like the 80s and early 90s, and it was, that was a time when everybody had a TV. It was really unusual to not have a TV. And I don't really know, I think my parents just, they didn't want to watch TV. They were much more interested in being outside and I don't know, doing whatever else. And they thought, oh, my children don't need a TV. And I mean, that always really annoyed me when I was a kid. And I was like, oh, my friends would be talking about TV programs and I'd be like, I don't know. But it meant that I read a lot. And I also have memories of, I think I must have just always wanted to read. I have memories of taking books down from the shelves at home, and I couldn't read, but I remember like scanning along the lines because I knew what reading was. And I remember just, going along the lines, pretending to read. And then my sister and I, we would go to the library every week and get about 8 books out and just plow through them. And the only times in my life now that I don't read, like have a day when I don't read, is when I'm ill. And it's how I know that I'm ill, because if I can't read, I'm ill. And that's the only reason. But I'm always reading. Every day I read. And I love it. I love it so much.
You just mentioned that you went to the library as a child. So what do libraries mean to you?
Oh my God, like everything. Yeah, I mean, I do buy books as well, for authors that I particularly want to support, or authors that I particularly love, or books that really catch my eye. But I couldn't afford to fund my reading habit without a library, to be quite honest. And I have to say that the library that is nearest to me is the Lincolnshire libraries. I know that we're kind of connecting up a whole bunch of libraries here, which is lovely. My one is Lincolnshire, which is where I live, and they are so brilliant because they have such a great stock, and they always have a whole load of the latest books. And for me now, as a oh my God, professional author, I want to keep up with the trends. I want to keep up with what's coming out. And my local library is just amazing for that. I can always get, the latest reads, the newest reads. And I learned fairly recently, which always makes me feel good, is that, authors also get paid for library borrowing and lending. So people who sometimes feel a bit worried about borrowing books from libraries and worrying that they're not supporting authors, you still are. So it's a great way to get your hands on books if you can't necessarily afford to buy your copies.
Definitely. You mentioned about new books there, so it brings me nicely to my next question. Have you got a new book in the pipeline, and if so, when can we hope to see it?
Yes, I have. So I'm really thrilled to say that I actually have signed a new 2-book contract with HQ HarperCollins, who are the publishers for Little White Lies and Safe and Sound. So my 3rd book, the manuscript is with my editor as we speak, so she's reading it for the first time. Fingers crossed you'll like it. So that one is due out, it'll be February, it's due out in February 2022. I think we're working to generally February publication date. So whenever February comes around, you can think to yourself, right, February, Philippa, that's when her new book will be coming out. And that one is about 2 neighboring suburban families whose disturbing secrets are revealed when a TV reality crew descend on their lives. So again, same sort of vein as the other ones. And yeah, I'm in the process of, I've just begun work on my draft for book 4. So yes, and I've got some ideas for 5 and 6 as well. So I've got plenty more coming.
To keep you busy then.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Philippa, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been lovely to talk to you. I'm just going to hold up Safe and Sound again. So Safe and Sound and Little White Lies available now by Philippa East. Philippa, thank you so much for joining us. And you'll have to, hopefully next February, perhaps we'll be able to meet up in person or pop to Lincolnshire Libraries in there. I'm sure they'll be glad to see you in person again.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's been such a pleasure talking to you, Miriam. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.